Hello everyone and welcome to Lads and Dads. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be doing an introduction to some of the exercises that we do during these workouts. Now, even if you've been doing these exercises for a while, this is quite a good idea just to make sure that you are in the right position and you don't need to regress or progress some of these exercises. We're going to start with kind of like a foundation exercises, then we'll move to intermediate ones, and then we'll look at the more advanced ones. I'll try and get through them as quick as I can, but it'll be really good to understand these. Now, we're going to start off with the squat. When you're doing a squat, dependent on your height and your hips will depend on how wide your feet go. Now, if you've got quite a long femur, which is this top part of your leg here, you might need to adjust your position slightly. You might see some people kind of really sitting in deep into that squat and keeping their chest up. Others have to drive their hips back a little bit if that femur is a little bit longer. So a squat will always depend on yourself, okay? So you've got to learn what position works for you. The main cues that I want you to think about when you're doing this is the ability to keep your chest up when you go down into your squat, the ability to make sure that your back doesn't fold when you get to the bottom. Now, if your back does fold, and that's called a butt wink, we want to make sure that the pelvis is staying down. So if you are going down and then it gets to the bottom here, you've probably gone too low for your mobility. So you need to adjust that accordingly. As I said, just keep your chest up, come down into that squat. As long as you can get your hips down to about the knee height, that's okay. Keep the weight on the heels, so we don't want to come up onto our toes. Drive up as you come up. Keep the chest up nice and high as well. Knee position as well. So I'll face you now. We want to kind of drive our knees out slightly. We want to make sure that those knees don't drop in too much as you're going into that squat. Toes are turned out ever so slightly. Sit down and come back up. Have a play around with it. If you need to have your feet slightly narrower or slightly wider, that's absolutely fine. These are just a couple of cues for your squats. Next up, we're going to go into a lunge. So when you're doing a lunge, dependent on your ability, you can start off in a static lunge position, which means you get your feet in the right position here. Front foot, weight is on the heel, back foot is up on the ball of your foot. Try and keep your chest, I say keep your chest up. What I mean by that is I don't want you to fold your chest down. Maintain your posture. You can kind of lean forward a little bit if you need to. Drive the back knee down to the floor and back up again. We come down, we come up. Try and get that position right. Keep the pelvis zipped upwards, okay? I see a lot of people, they lose their pelvis, they lose position in their pelvis as they come down because they perhaps don't quite have the strength in their hamstring or their glute to maintain that position. So just try and zip up, find your position, we drop the knee down and back up again. If you're pretty good at your lunges, you can do a step lunge. So we step down, drop the knee down towards the floor, and then push off the heel to come back up again. I'm going to show you from the front. Another thing that I want you to think about is a knee position. So a lot of people, when they do this, their knee drops inwards, hips come out, and you're out of position. So try and maintain a good solid knee position. So as that knee drops down, the knee's pushing out, keep your chest up, and then drive back up again. Down, knee drops to the floor, and back up again. Now, depending on your height will depend on how far forward or how far you step. So you need to adjust that accordingly, okay? Next up, we've got push-ups. Now, when you're doing a push-up, options. You can start on your knees, place your toes on the ground. We're gonna slowly lower ourselves down, leaning over your hands. Come down, chest to floor, and back up again. A key thing is keep your abs tight, so don't lose your abs. So when your butt sticks out like this, you've lost your abs. So you're going to zip up, give your glutes a bit of a squeeze, lean over the hands, slowly come down, drive back up again, okay? Start off on your knees, and then you can progress onto your toes. Another really good way to actually get that position, understand it, is to lie down on the ground. Get your hands, place them underneath your shoulder, underneath your armpits. From this position, try and keep your core tight, abs strong, and then push yourself back up again. It's a really good cue to understand the fundamentals of when you're doing a push-up. Your hand position. So don't go too wide with your hands. A lot of people kind of go really wide with their hands, and then their elbows start to flare out. Now I'm 6'2". If my hands are on the mat, okay? So if your hands are off the mat, unless you're kind of 6'6" and above, then you've got to bring them in, leaning over the hands, elbow position. So if your elbows come in tight here, we're going to work the triceps. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But we want to make sure if we want to work the chest, we're going to flare out to about 45-degree angle. So this is too narrow for our chest, and this will be too wide, and that puts a lot of stress on our shoulders. So find your angle. If you think about leaning over your hand, your elbows will naturally come into a better position, and then you can drive back up. Once you've got those cues, if you're feeling strong enough, you can come up onto your toes. You see the difference is very little. From here, that's my kneeling. Watch. Boom. Now, I'm in a great position. I'm going to lean over my hands, 45-degree angle on my elbows, pushing outwards, chest to floor, and then I drive back up. Down I come, back up. The whole time, I want to keep my core nice and tight, abs are engaged, nice and strong. Next up, we're going to go into a plank position. So, same idea. As the push-ups, we're going to start on our knees. So, onto our knees, toes on the ground still, elbows are underneath the shoulders, separate your hands, keep your head nice and still, and don't lose your pelvis. Again, same thing, we want to zip that pelvis up so you can squeeze your glutes, hold in this position. Keep your head nice and still, and just maintain a good solid position. Now, even myself, I've been doing these for 20 plus years, and I can still feel this, even though I'm on my knees, I can still feel my core holding me stable. So there's nothing wrong with being on your knees. It's a perfect regression. When you feel strong enough, look, the difference is here to here. A lot of people, when they kind of get into it, they start to struggle, they push the hips up in the air. We want to try and make sure those hips stay down, head position is strong, and we just stay solid in that position. Now, we're going to come back up. We're going to do something called the hip hinge. Now, this is used a lot in a lot of movements, particularly a deadlift. We're going to do a row in a bit as well, which you need to understand the hip hinge, sorry. When you're doing your hip hinge, so this is folding from your back, nothing wrong with that. Got to have good flexion through the spine. So coming up and down here, there's no problem with that. In a walkout, for example, you fold yourself down, touch your toes, and then walk yourself out. But if you've got a heavy weight, that's going to put a lot of stress on your vertebrae, and you can bulge a disc doing that, which nobody wants. So understanding that bending from here, that's your spine moving. Bending from here, that's bending from your pelvis. So that is your hip hinge. You soften your knees, okay? So you don't lock your legs out, you soften the knees. Think about pushing your hips backwards. So you're leaning back. See, most of the weight now, although it's kind of even in my feet, I can feel the weight distributing towards the back of my foot, and my head is going forward. And I just keep driving those hips back, tilting the pelvis down. So I'm hinging from here. I can feel my hamstrings. I haven't got the best mobility in my hamstrings, so I can feel that really stretching into the hamstrings. And then as I come up, fold up nice and simple. This is a great exercise to practice. If you place your hand on your stomach and your hand on your lower back, these are called good mornings. So you're just driving the hips back, tilt. If you can feel your back going with that back hand, you've gone too far, okay? So just learn to go as far as you can. Zip up, push down, zip up, and push down. Okay, so practice that one. That's probably the toughest one to get right, but once you've got it, it's fantastic. So we've done our kind of basic ones. I'm going to go into a more intermediate sort of exercises. I'm going to introduce the dumbbell. So we're going to do a shoulder press. Now I'm going to go down onto my knees just because of the height on the camera now. You can stand up with this, you can sit down on a bench, on the floor, whatever you want to do. Now, when you're doing a shoulder press, dumbbell comes up to your hand, elbow, if the elbow, we don't want the elbow to go too wide, okay? This is not optimal position. It's a great position and you can do a nice wide shoulder press with this one, but if you've not got great mobility in your lats, for example, or in your delts, pec, it's going to play around with that and you could cause an injury. So just ever so slightly, bring the elbow, again, that 45 degrees. Coming in here is called a neutral grip press, nothing wrong with that. But just for simplicity, we're going to come out to about a 45 degree. You squeeze your shoulder blades together. As you press up, we bring the bicep to the ear, and then control it back down again, okay? Keep your core nice and tight. We want to make sure that the ribs, they call ribs don't flare, so we want to make sure the ribs stay down. We don't arch our lower back as we try and press up, particularly when it's heavy. So you engage your abs, keep your core nice and tight, we press up to above the head, and then slowly back down. Now you can do this with 2 or the 1. 1 is obviously harder because you are using a bit more of your core in order to do this, but I actually quite like using a single arm. Double hand, you can go real heavy push, but with this one, you've got to use your core strength. So for example, if this was a heavy weight for me now, I would tilt it down, I'd use my core strength to drive it up and use momentum. But this is not really what we want to be working. We want to be working that strength in that shoulder. So we keep the core nice and tight, abs are engaged, we press above the head, and then slowly back down again. Coming up, and then slowly back down again. Next up, we've got a row. So when you're doing a row, a lot of the time you can kind of place your knee and your hand on a bench where you can do that single arm row, or you can even place your non-working hand on your knee so you can get that kind of good solid row. I'm going to show you just a core work one. So with this one, it's that same position that we were working on before, feet shoulder width apart, we hip hinge down, holding onto the dumbbell, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to row towards my hip. So a lot of people when they row, they come up like this, up and down here, okay? Now, look how much my elbow is bending. We're working a lot more on the bicep when you row towards the armpit. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and aim, and you can actually put the dumbbell in front of you a little bit to kind of really force engagement on the lats and pull towards the hip, holding in this position. We control it back down again. Let the back of the shoulder, it's called the scapula, let that come down. So you can kind of work on what's called a scapular retraction first. So you kind of retract the scapula, pull, and then row to the hip. And let it come down, let the shoulder come down. And then if you know you've got it right, because if you do that in 2, so we come up, here, back down and down. So there's no pause between the scapular retraction and the row. So we come up, squeeze and pull. And that will really get that nice big lat to work, big strong muscle. And up all the time, keeping your core nice and tight, okay? Again, little things can make a big difference when you're doing the rows. It is a lot easier, you can go a lot heavier if you've got a bench to kind of lean the weight onto, and you can really kind of push against that to drive it up. But that's a really good little tip for you when you're doing a row, okay? And then next up, we're gonna go into a more advanced. So, everyone's favorite now, burpee, okay? If you've done some of my videos and you see me bouncing up and down, working fast, I've got a lot of practice at my burpees. I'm not the best at them, but I think I can go pretty strong. I tend to go slightly wider with my feet when I do my burpees. It's all down to preference. Some people actually prefer to have their feet nice and close together. Now you can drop yourself down all the way to the floor, place your hands on the floor, kick the legs out, leaning over the hands. Now what I see a lot of people do, particularly when they first start doing it, is they try and do a push-up at the bottom, okay? That's great if you're looking to strengthen your body or strengthen the upper body, but if you're looking for that maximum calorie burn and you want to get as many as you can in the 45 seconds, just allow yourself to kind of fall to the floor, and then as you come up, bring your chest up, knees up, feet up, and then jump your legs in and then jump, okay? So I go wider with my feet. I tend to hip hinge, which we've learnt before, rather than squat down, okay? So I hip hinge down. I don't even place my hands on the floor before I kick my legs out. So I'm here, and then the legs go out, and I catch myself, drop down to the floor, I come up, use that momentum to drive the legs in, come up, and then I have my little jump, okay? If you're in a competition, you have to lock out the hips and jump, rather than just jumping here, keeping your head forward. You can get no rep for that, which if some of you want to do competitions, you never want a no rep, trust me. It's soul destroying. So I'm just going to show you this one more time. We drive the hips back, hands just off the floor, kick the legs out, down, come up, lock out and jump. Oh yeah, they get you going. But practice that one. Okay. Next up, we've got a ground to overhead. Now, a lot of time when people do this one, they quite easily go into a cheat mode. So what I mean by cheat mode is they'll fold down like this. Okay, when you're tired, this is a position. Now, what do you think is bringing that up? That's my lower back. You keep doing that repetitively, it's going to really hurt your lower back, and you do not want that, particularly if you've got a load of other exercises that are quite tough to do as well, which may put stress on your lower back. You'll end up having a sore lower back, which nobody wants. So, when you're doing your ground to overheads, keep your arm nice and relaxed. Now, I only ever really touch one dumbbell head down, makes it a lot easier. We squat ourselves down, so the hips come down, knees come forward, keep your chest up. From this position, you're going to use the momentum of your legs to bring it up above your head. What we don't use is we don't use our shoulders to bring it up. That's making it really difficult. We're going to use the momentum. This is a high intensity exercise designed to burn a lot of calories. So you drop down into that squat position, keep your chest up nice and high. From here, we're going to drive up, use that explosive power. The elbow leads, then the hand just flicks up. You lock it out at the top. Now, if it's particularly heavy from this position, you bring it down to your shoulder and back down again. I'll show you from this side here. So we're squatting down. We use the power of our legs, almost as if you should feel like you're almost jumping in the air. Lock it out at the top. If it's heavy, you can catch it down and then bring it down to the floor. Now, if you've got real confidence with this one, you drop it down, come up and back down, up, back down, each time. Using the power of the legs, you'll be able to go all day long if you can get that technique right with that one. And it is an explosive exercise rather than a strength where it's slow and controlled. Use explosive power. I can feel my heart rate already from doing a few of them, maybe with the burpees as well, I don't know. So we've got one more to do. Now this is arguably the toughest one. Think about those two exercises we've just done, those two explosive exercises. We're going to put them together. This is called a devil press. Very difficult to do, takes a lot out of you, a real challenge. So this is a really good one. So think about that burpee we just did. Feet slightly wider if you prefer. We're going to come down to the floor. This time you're actually going to place the dumbbell to the floor. We come all the way down to the floor, come back up. Now, options with this one. If you're doing light and many repetitions, jump your feet in nice and close. So then that can make it easier to drive it up and back down again, so you can get that nice, quick loading. You get many repetitions out with that one. If it's slightly heavier, I'm going to show you something that you probably need to do, is you might need to jump your legs in a little less, okay? So it allows a little bit of momentum, almost as if you're going to do a kettlebell swing. So a kettlebell swing, you'll pull in and then drive it up above your head. So it all depends on the weight. So here I'm going to show you. Drop down, jump up, halfway in, we pull in, use that momentum to drive it up above our head. Remember, if it's heavy, you catch it down here, put it in between your legs, then place it on the floor. We drop down, come up halfway, pull in, drive up, catch, pull in here, and place in front. So we've got that space. You practice that, you'll get a really good rhythm for that, and you'll understand the momentum. But have a little practice of the two of them, okay? And that's about it. That's it. So a little different today, but this is really important. Listen, even if you've done loads of my workouts or loads of training before, go through this. It's a really good way to just kind of have a look, have a think about your positioning. Am I in the right position? You might have been doing some exercises previously in the past and thought, you know what, my lower back really hurts when I do that, or yeah, it just doesn't feel right. Have a little go at these. Think about these cues and these little tips and regressions. If you're not in the right position, have a think about the regressions before you go into the full exercise, okay? Listen guys, thanks so much for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep the comments coming. Listen, have a great day. Take care.